All right, let's jump right in. The Indian market right now, it's basically a giant tug of war. You've got global investors pulling their money out on one side, and on the other, domestic investors are digging in their heels and pulling back. So the big question is, who's actually winning this thing? Let's get into it. And that's really the core question we're tackling today, isn't it? When you have these two massive forces pulling in totally opposite directions, who comes out on top? This is, without a doubt, the question on every single investor's mind. So yeah, it really is a classic tug of war. You've got foreign exits on one end of the rope and this incredible domestic might on the other. Let's really unpack what that looks like on the ground. Okay, so take a look at the two sides here. On the one hand, you've got the foreign institutional investors, the FIIs, and they're yanking a lot of capital out, mostly because of all the uncertainty happening around the world. But, and this is a huge but, at the very same time, our domestic funds are jumping in, buying things up. They're basically creating this amazing cushion that's holding the market up. It's a really powerful counterbalance, for sure. So what happens when these two behemoths collide? Well, you get exactly this, volatility. The market gets choppy, it gets unpredictable, it creates a really complex environment. But here's the key thing to remember. All this choppiness, all this volatility, it also carves out a landscape that's just packed with opportunities, for anyone who's paying close attention. Okay, so let's pull back for a second and look at the bigger picture. This tug of war isn't just happening on its own, right? It's playing out against a much broader economic backdrop, and there are some major forces shaping the whole field. So, what's going on in the wider economy? Well, a couple of things are worth noting. First up, it looks like the government might get a nice little dividend bonus, which is great because that could mean more spending to juice the economy. Then you've got the rupee, which is feeling the pressure from those foreign fund exits we talked about. And that, of course, makes imports pricier. But on the flip side, the RBI is telling us the banking sector is looking much, much healthier. Plus, they're keeping a close eye on the NBFCs to make sure everything stays stable. See, each one of these is like another little twist in our tug of war story. All right, this is where it gets super interesting. All this tension in the market is creating what's basically a tale of two fortunes. We're seeing some very, very clear winners and losers pop up in different parts of the economy. First, let's talk about a sector that's really feeling the heat, the domestic airline industry. Wow, they're projected to lose up to 18,000 crore rupees in FY26. That is just a massive headwind, all thanks to soaring costs and just brutal competition. But then, you flip the coin over and you see this. The IPO market is expected to raise a mind-boggling 4 lakh crore rupees in 2026. I mean, talk about a completely different story, right? And this really lays out that stark contrast perfectly. You've got aviation on one side, just getting hammered by operational costs. And on the other, you have this absolutely booming IPO market, just flooded with investor cash and new opportunities. It's the perfect snapshot of the divergence we're seeing everywhere. Okay, so we've gone from the 30,000-foot view down to the sectors. Now let's zoom in one more time, right down to the company level, to see who's getting caught in the crossfire and who's thriving. These are the real stories from the street. And this line right here from Bharat Electronics, it just perfectly sums up the vibe for the companies that are winning. When you hear about big contract wins like this, it's basically a giant flashing sign to the market that says, hey, demand is strong and growth is coming. And in a market like this, that's music to any investor's ears. And listen, it's not just Bharat Electronics. We're seeing smart moves all over the place. Take the Coforge and Crore deal. That's a classic play to grab more market share and get stronger. At the same time, you have giants like Reliance really doubling down on solid governance to keep investors feeling confident. The bottom line is, in this kind of market, every single company is out there fighting its own battle to come out on top. So, okay, we've looked at the big economic picture, we've drilled down into the sectors, and we've even seen how specific companies are handling things. So what's the big takeaway here? How do we wrap our heads around all these complicated currents? At the end of the day, the story of the market right now boils down to this one simple, powerful idea. It's that constant tug of war. You have global jitters pulling money away, and you have this incredibly strong domestic belief holding the line. And right now, that delicate balance, well, it's everything. And that leaves us with one last really big question for you to think about. As this amazing domestic strength keeps propping up the market against all that foreign selling, are we just looking at some hidden risk here? Is there a chance the floor could just drop out from under us? Or is this the beginning of a truly once-in-a-generation opportunity for anyone who buys into the India growth story? That's the billion-dollar question.